I'll sit on this end so that I've got the table.
Just have a bit of a
Yep.
have a bit of a go at that. Jim.
Graham.
Yes.
Right.
Can you hear me?
No.
No. Okay.
Move your mic.
Tune up your mic, mate.
I think the problem's revisiting us, but we'll get by. Now, the profile of the champion, ladies and gentlemen. I had a look at a thesaurus today and I couldn't really find enough words, but driven, dedicated, fearless, committed, probably a person who does not speak about himself other than when invited. But tonight isn't about me, it's about Jim and Stephen. Okay. According to the records, you guys have had extensive careers, winning championships in just about everything, series, touring car championships, Bathurst, plus Targa rallies. You've been a bit lucky.
How you work, the luckier you get, isn't it? I think. Listen, I mean, we've had some great success, but I mean, it didn't start off that way. I mean, when I first started racing, and I'm talking back in 1965, I had no ambitions whatsoever to even think of winning a race, because I couldn't. I was in a class of racing in New Zealand that hired a 105E Anglia. I was running against 327 Corvette engine shed coupes, Mark 1 consoles with Jaguar engines. You with me, the Mark 1 consoles, guys? Humber 80s with Jaguar engines, all sorts of, things. And the class was called All Comers. So I was just happy to drive my little car as fast as I could, and never had the thought of winning races, even championships. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to actually win a race. And that was a handicap race, so I started at the front. But no, just, we've had Steve and I have fantastic times, great careers. I've had a great career so far, and Steve's is still going. But I'm cruising along.
Okay. 10 Bathurst wins between you, and you drove together a couple of times. Stephen, how good was that, driving with the old man?
Yeah, that was
Not bad.
not bad. But when you're a young bloke coming up the ranks of motor racing, you're pretty sort of driven, and you've got a goal. You want to move through. You want to win a championship or win at that race. And 1996 was the first time. And at this stage, I'd come out of Formula Ford, and I'd been doing a bit of touring car racing in a 2-litre championship. And Dad had just sort of finished his V8 touring cars, as it was known back in sort of the 90s, mid-90s. He'd sort of finished up his full-time role. Now, you didn't really think it at the time, but Dad sort of said, what about, can I drive with Gary Rogers, who I was driving with at the time, and drove with me in 96 and 97. Now, looking back on that time, and in 97 we finished second at Bathurst together, and as I said, at the time, you're just a young guy trying to make your way and get the best result you can. And when you're working together, it's not dad and son, it's driver and co-driver, however that mix works, and you're trying to achieve a result. But when you look back at it now, it's pretty cool, because at that point in time, Dad could have driven for anyone. He could have, and he did after that. He drove with he was the top guy, and yet he wanted to come back and lend a hand to a small up and coming team. We Gary Rogers Motorsport in 1996 had 5 full-time staff, and we ran 2 very different touring car programs in both V8s and the 2-litre series as it was known back then. So now of course we look back, because how often can a dad and a son share achievements in the highest levels of any sort of sport? It's very rare, because football or soccer, or those sports that require you to be incredibly fit and athletic
And young.
Both of you don't get to share in that. And yet we've had some great races against one another, and we were doing a thing a couple of weeks ago, and I got some footage of 1995 Adelaide Grand Prix, and that was probably the first time Dad and I had a real good race together. He was driving the Ford Mondeo, and I was driving Gary Rogers' little Alfa Romeo. And we had in the final race, we had this awesome, unbelievable race that went on for, for ages. And in the end, I cocked up and went
Oh, you
wide.
let it get
A young fella just made a simple mistake and I had to sneak past.
Yes. So, we're pretty lucky. I'm very lucky.
Doesn't get much better than that. Yeah. Can you hear me all right? I think Jim's debut was at Bathurst in, just come to mind here, 74 with Rod Coppins. And you'd never seen the place before, and you were third outright. Rod Coppins.
Yeah, Rod Collins.
Yeah.
Rod was a New Zealand saloon car champion in his own right in New Zealand, and we became friends over the years when I started racing in the outright class. And in '74, I think we just got married. Steve was just been born, 2 or 3, and I had no money at all. My wife and I, we'd just got our first mortgage and moved into our house. So Rod said to me, "Listen, I'm buying an L34 Tirana, and I want to race it at Bathurst. Would you like to come and drive it with me?" I said, "Oh, geez, I'd love to, but I haven't got any money. I can't get over there." He said, "Don't worry, I'll sort out the airfares and stuff." And so it was just like an adventure. There was a whole lot of Kiwi supporters, you could say, and friends that decided that if Rod and I were going to Bathurst, they would come too. And there was just a mass of people. And when I say mass, it was probably a dozen.
Half of North Island.
But we stayed at on Conrod Strait. What's the corner coming on the straight? Forest Elbow.
Yeah.
As you go around Forest Elbow now, you go about 100 metres, then you turn right, similar to where Dick went through the trees. You go right down there, and there was a scout camp, and it was a place where the scouts would go and they'd have a big dormitory, big breakfast hall, but the accommodation was about 50 people in one big long dormitory. So we didn't know hardly any of them, but there was us 12 Kiwis staying there. And of course every night we'd cruise around the track, pull into the scout camp, stay the night, go in the morning, wait for the shower. It was only about 2 or 3 showers. Brekkie, back down to the track and away we go. We practiced okay, qualified. I can't think where we qualified, to be honest now. There was no top 10s in that in those days. But on race morning we woke up and it was raining. Shit. We haven't got anywhere with the tyres. We hadn't thought about that. We only had a limited amount of wheels. So with that, we leapt up, went to the track earlier than we had to try and buy some wet with the tyres. And we could only buy, would you believe, 2 intermediates and 2 wets. And that was all we could get. And they were Firestone. And so we said, well, we'll have them. We fitted them on the car, and as it turned out, the last sort of probably 2 hours or so was wet. And so we had our 4 tyres on the car and we just blazed around as fast as we could, and all of a sudden we realised, hell, we're coming somewhere. But then the front brakes wore through the pad material and the steel, and the front brakes failed. So all we drove on for about an hour was rear brakes. And I was having a battle with a guy called Rod McRae. Anyone remember the Tirana? And he barrel rolled it down Conrod Strait right in front of me. In actual fact, if he had it on the road, I would have hit him. We were so close. He actually went off on a puddle of water and went to the infield, up the bank, and then rolled across the track in front of me, then hit a tree with the floor of the car. And it virtually bent the car in half. The tree, and afterwards, he got away with a scratched ear. But the Tirana was like a boomerang.
Yeah.
It hit on the floor of the car, right where the back seat is, and the floor of the car was up virtually to his back. But he was sitting in the front, the tree had gone up the middle, and amazing how he wasn't killed. But I have to say, if he had rolled on the track, he almost rolled above me. Come back.
Don't yell at it.
So, but that year was fantastic. I mean, we had no plan on doing anything but just driving in the race. That was fantastic. But I'll always remember that it's a story which you shouldn't do now and you can't do. But to get back to our motel, the scout camp, you had to drive around the track. And so a fair bit of Bear was concerned, before we had to go back to stay the night around at our thing. So we had to drive up the track and around and then go into our scout camp. And the guy who's still a friend of mine now, who comes and helps me, had a Tirana, four-door Tirana, and he was transporting us back to the scout camp. But of course he was drunk. We were all drunk. And on the last Armco, before we turned right to go to the scout camp, he whacked the back of the Tirana, had two great big Armco grooves in the back of it, and away we went to the scout camp. Got there and safe. But tell you what, I don't drive that well as a passenger, even when I are drunk. And, it definitely wasn't a good time for us.
Jim, the answer to that question was yes.
Yes.
Starting
If you weren't such a good interviewer, I would have said yes.
Who are the people that maybe inspired you in your early days? We spoke about Bruce McLaren and Denny Holm, but they were kind of a little bit older. Were there guys that were racing at that time that gave you the drive to do better?
Well, I think that with Denny Hume, who I became friends with many years after he retired, after Denny had retired, I became friends. He would stay with us when he came over to Aussie, and I would go and see them in New Zealand. But the guys that I probably looked up to a bit were in the saloon car ranks in New Zealand who were winning at the time.
Yeah.
So I sort of I wanted to achieve what they were achieving if I could. Bearing in mind, when I started, I couldn't, but as the years rolled on, I got into better cars, from an Anglia to an Escort, to a twin cam Escort. But at the same time as driving these cars, I was driving Monaro in the production car series, Hillman Imp in the 0 to 1000 series. Great looking. And I see on one of your trophies up in the room upstairs, there's a Hillman Imp on the trophy and a Ford Corsair or something.
I'm going to steal that trophy one day.
So I looked up, probably not looked up to, but wanted to be like a guy called Paul Fahey, who he was sort of he won. He did most of the winning in NZ, and he had a Mustang, the first of the Mustangs to come to the country. One of them was Paul's, but a really good driver, but a guy that would surround himself with the right people, and so he had a really good mechanic, good budget, and a great car. So that's sort of who I wanted to sort of probably try and beat, you could say.
Okay, now in he's got one. Let me have a go this one.
Yeah, Steve.
I've worn that one out.
It doesn't like people yelling at it. Yeah, Stephen, are you like most young guys, growing up, you wanted to be just like Peter Brock?
Not really, because as silly as it sounds, our annual family holiday was to Bathurst every year, so that was it. Like we'd either go to New Zealand, back to the Rallos, or go to Bathurst. So I was around all this going on, and to be honest, it was probably why in some cases I didn't trip on actually being involved in it until I was sort of 15, because everywhere I went, these guys were around. It wasn't Peter Brock or Dick Johnson or Larry Perkins or whoever was at the track. They were just guys that Dad was hanging out with in one way or another. So, I was grovelling around in the pits. Generally, one of the things we used to do when we go to Bathurst is I used to have this tent up the back of the pits when I was a kid, and it was full of computer games. Drop your tent. Well, we worked out that if you went round the back of the tent and climbed up under the canvas, all of the backs of the machines were exposed, and you could hit the thing where the 20 cents went in and get free credits. So we as kids, we had all those sorts of adventures. The car racing was just, that was going on. But again, growing up and all these sorts of things, and when I got older, I guess, the perfect role model was the guy that was living in the house with me. I sort of, he was a bit of a pain in the arse. He was always yelling at me and getting in trouble. Yeah, broke a few wooden spoons on the backside. But
there's a question about there. Like is Jim an advisor or a harsh critic, or where would you rate him given that he's your dad and he's giving you a lift home.
I don't have to go home for dinner anymore, so that's not an issue. I must admit, I don't. Maybe Dad remembers, but I don't actually ever remember having conversations about Dad, how do you drive like this or do this? There were more conversations and questions about, you know, Dad had come home and I would be, of course, I was a massive motor racing fan, regardless of never thinking to actually be involved from a competitive standpoint. But I'd watch all of the races, and you know, I'd hear the commentators or the drivers talking about, you know, it was going good and then my tyres went off, or I was having a bit of a gear selection issue, or my brakes were fading. Well, those were the questions that I can remember more asking, because I was trying to get an understanding for what they were talking about. So I think when I did actually come to start driving, that was the bit that helped. You know, there was the bit where, you know, Dad could tell me, you know, you got to put your foot on the brake here or turn the car there. But at the level that you're at, you can't always do that. You've got to learn that and experience that. But the other bits I could learn from him were, well, you know, when the tyres have too much air in them and they get too hot, this is what it feels like. So I think from that perspective, Dad was more help to me, unless I crashed the car or something.
I was always a bit of a believer in, it's very, very hard to say to someone, listen, you're not going around that corner fast enough. Just leave hook fat yourself and go around the corner. Because if they're not up to speed and capable of doing that and they're at the wrong line on the circuit, they could spear up and hurt themselves. So I never really told Steve very much about that at all, because you have to teach yourself to get to the level you're comfortable with. And so we didn't talk about what's exactly as Steve said. We didn't talk about how you go in the corner or whatever. It was the fact is that he taught himself, as I did. And that's better. And it's the old story. I mean, you can tell someone to do something, but if they don't want to at this stage or not capable at the stage in their career, you don't want them to be spearing off the track and hurting themselves because you've said, well, you can go in the corner easily, you can like a lot faster. And so I never really said that. And I wasn't around a lot. I mean, when Steve started go-karting, well, I'd have to give him a lift to the track, or Mum would give him a lift to the track because he didn't have a licence. But then I'd go and park on the straight and watch him. And so he had to fear for himself, because I wasn't going to be around on the weekends, because most weekends I was away doing my thing. So I would watch from the car, and Steve sort of got to know another family, you know, father and son, who were racing every weekend, and he cottoned on to them. They became friends, so Steve was part of their little deal. And I think that was better than actually trying to, you know, tell someone to go faster.
He didn't want to get involved in the dad and kids fights either.
Dads versus dad fights.
Dads versus dad fights out the back of the go-kart. It still goes on now. Now I'm a dad with a son doing go-karts.
So do you go along and watch your grandkids?
For sure, yeah, wherever I can. We went last weekend. Was it Sunday night? Saturday night. It was a night meeting, so I was... where was I? Was it in Geelong? No. Oakley, yeah. No. Was I at Geelong?
You were,
Yeah. I drove back from Geelong, from the speed trials, and came back to Oakley to watch the kids, yeah.
We're going to have to get younger blokes, right? I think.
A bit of memories. That was last week.
In actual fact, my sister Danielle, her son now is also racing. So, and this has really only happened in probably the last 6 months. They've moved back from country Victoria, and now we've got the Clay and his cousin Jet, and then there's Zane, who's another story as well. So we're rapidly expanding our fleet of go-karts in the garage at the moment.
Now you trained as an aircraft engineer, so obviously you earn a living doing that.
It's a fancy name for a mechanic.
Okay, yeah. Working on planes instead of cars. When did the time arrive when you found that you could actually make a living out of motor racing? Is that a kind of defined?
I never. Yeah, look, I guess a little bit different era, but it's a lot like Dad. I hadn't even thought of motor racing as a career. I went karting because when I did trip on it, it was through one of Dad's mates who had bought a go-kart and said, we used to have Friday night fish and chips, and he was over and he said, "Oh, I bought a cart. You want to come out tomorrow?" Yep, no problem. So it was from that moment when I actually participated. I thought, wow, how long was... And I was playing footy and cricket and all that sort of thing, and instantly everything was sold to try and get my hands on go-kart. So the karting thing was exactly that. It was just karting, but I was enjoying it so much that I would do it as often as I could, whenever I could, whether it was practice racing, every weekend. I became more consumed with it. And then as that was going along, then all of a sudden, I was working down at Dad's Bob Jane team up for school holidays, trying to get the money to go and do a bit of karting as a 15 or a 16-year-old, and then I was okay at school, but worked out that I actually really enjoyed working on the car, preparing it. Like one night during the week after a race meeting, that was about stripping the cart down to there's a chassis. The next night was cleaning it. The night after that was putting it back together, ready for the next race meeting, and I enjoyed that. So at the time, I sort of thought I wanted to be a pilot, and then the school thing was getting harder and harder for me. And I thought, what's the best thing you can do is try and combine the two, and got an apprenticeship as an aircraft mechanic. So I did that on Moorabbin Airport, little airport out in Melbourne, and that was sort of at the period where the go-karts finished, and I had a couple of little opportunities to go and have a drive in Formula V and an HQ and a Formula Ford, and that's when that started. So when I actually turned from being an aircraft mechanic to going car racing was with Gary Rogers. So the last 2 years of Formula Ford, we were now competing nationally, had a bit of sponsorship from Valvoline, separate to sort of Gary, with Gary but separate to Gary, and then we won the championship. When we won the championship, I'd finished my apprenticeship. I was in my first year as a tradesman, and then literally won the championship, and I don't know when it was, I can't remember, but Gary came and offered me a position in his race team as a mechanic, but driving the cars on the weekend. And at the time, Gary Rogers Motorsport was me and another guy. That was it. I was mechanic, as with a guy called Mike Exel, who used to do all the engine stuff, and still did at Gary's for many years. And that grew. We started out at Calder Park Thunderdome in the Oscar series. Gary had been doing that for a number of years himself, and so it started there, and then it built from there.
So Gary Rogers helped you in the early days, just like Bob Jane helped you get established. So what can you say about Bob Jane as a bloke?
Well, Bob was instrumental in me probably being here where I am today, in a way. Maybe we would have somehow got here, but without Bob, so it would have been harder. But because when I came from New Zealand, in the early days, we were driving sports sedans. We had the Mustang and then a Falcon sports sedan, and we'd always happened to be at the same race meetings that Bob Jane was at. And so we became friends at the track, didn't mix socially or anything, and we would always be racing against each other. And we had some terrific races, and I'm sure there was mutual respect between Bob and I was a young guy, he was a bit older, obviously. But at a time when I was almost ready to, not call it a day, but just because money had ran out, I didn't own the car that I was running. I've never owned any of the cars that I raced up until, 10 years ago, if that. But I was selling, the guy that owned the Falcon sports sedan that I had wanted to get his money back. So I was over here and I had a Bob Jane T-Mark, which Bob had helped us get into, my cousin and myself. But Bob, the car had to go back to a warehouse to be sold. And so I'd finished racing the sports sedans. At that time, I had to drive a Bathurst with Brocky, and I'd driven a couple of years with him. So about 1980, the sports sedan had to be sold so that the guy that owned it in New Zealand could recoup his dollars. And I happened to be talking to Bob Jane. He came into the team up one day and said, "How's things going?" And I said, he didn't sound like that. He swore every single word as a swear word. And he said, "How things going?" And I said, "Yeah, no good." He said, "Where's your car?" Because I normally had it in the showroom. So I said, it's going to be sold, and the owner has got it down at Peter Jansen's warehouse. Now, most of you heard of Peter Jansen? Well, the captain had a warehouse in Melbourne, which was ginormous. And when I took the car down there, I could hardly get into the place. because there's crates and crates and crates of Schweppes drinks and boxes of frigging lollies and bloody candy bars and stuff. And they were everywhere. It was almost like a warehouse for all of Jansen's suppliers. So he must have done some sort of contra deal. And he had all this drink and lollies and beers and wines and all that. So anyway, parked the car in there. And Bob said, "Where's the car?" And I said, "Well, I know I'm not driving it because the owner wants to sell it." And he said, "Oh, that's a shame." He said, "Come and see me tomorrow in my office." Okay. So next day I went down to Bob's office in Queensbury Street in Melbourne. And he said, "Listen, how much does that guy want for your car?" Well, it wasn't my car, but the car that I was driving. And I said, "He wants $20,000 for it. This is the Falcon Sports Sedan of the day, which was a winning car." And Bob said, 20 grand. Shit. So he said, "Is that a good price?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's not bad." He said, "Okay, well, here, you got a cheque book out, wrote a cheque for $20,000. Says, here, give that to him, get your car back, and let's go and do some more racing." And so that was a little story I haven't told very much in the past for no reason, but people haven't asked. And then a couple of years later when I sold it, got the 20 grand back, gave it back to Bob, and the boy was happy. He was a great guy, a really good guy, but he was a hard businessman. And he made it very, very easy for I to get into a T-Mart, basically. And that's probably, that in the car helped me get to where I am now. So that was really good.
Actually, on one occasion, I think you might have driven Clem's Charger.
I did drive Clem's Charger. What a fantastic car it was. Well, my car had broken down, and it was in the Sports Sedan Championship at Adelaide International Raceway, and Clem kindly allowed me to have a drive of the Charger. It was great, pretty good.
And you didn't crash it?
I did not crash it, no. I was a scared stiff that I wasn't as fast as I could.
Now, the reputation that you developed over the years of being a good driver in the rain, do you reckon that started back with Rod Coppins in '74, or were there other periods that got you there? Or was it just because it rains a lot in New Zealand?
People say that, but no, listen, people often say to me, and years ago and even today, like, why did you go so good in the rain? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, all I figured was that the wet is just like the dry, only it's a lot slipperier. So you still drive it.
Oh, sorry, that's just the way it works. Growing up with it.
So you drive as hard as you can without spearing off the track, with the grip that you've got available.
Simple.
But I can tell you that was my theory on it. But the main reason that I got the moniker, you might say, was because I had a lot bigger wheels and tyres than anyone else. When I first came to Australia, the Mustang that I bought here had 16-inch wide rear wheels and 12-inch wide front. And for the first 3 meetings, I was given dispensation to run that wheel and tyre package against the Australian cars that had 10-inch wide wheels. But their tyres were a different style of tyre. They were a cantilever tyre, as Clem would know, and so they still had 13 inches of rubber on the road, but on a 10-inch rim. I had probably 15 inches of rubber on the road on a 16-inch wide wheel. So realistically, I probably had a better wheel and tyre package at the time. But the first thing that I learnt earlier on, the newer your tyres were, the better you were going to go. So as soon as you could sell your old tyres to somebody for half the price, you buy a new set the next day and put on the car. So that was the best way. Most of the time, you don't use your wets, and you guys who've got cars probably are the same. Where you might do one meeting a year and they're all rain. So what's wrong with those tyres? You keep them for 5 years. It's the worst thing you can do. You've got to get rid of them and get a new set for the next year. But nowadays, no, all the guys drive really good in the wet, and and towards the end of my career, guys were driving every bit as good as I was, and better sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll take that as a read. Yeah. Now, Stephen, your dad had besides being good in the wet, he was often called Gentleman Jim. Is there any reason that...
Not at my house.
No. So that's a total myth, isn't it?
Oh, look, I don't know. I actually don't have too many bad stories. I do remember. I do remember when I was working in the T-Mart in the school holidays. So I was 14 or something, And Dad was he was I guess like every dad, he wanted to make sure his son was working hard and not slacking off and all that sort of thing. And quite often I was slacking off, so.
Most of the time.
So I remember one day, I can't remember why, but it was school holidays and I wanted to go and go karting or probably go and catch up with my mates or do whatever. And, I was itching for Saturday, you only worked till midday or whatever, and there were a lot of, it was a busy day, there were a lot of cars in the team up, we were fitting tyres and doing all that sort of stuff. And I said, Dad, come on, I'm going to catch up with my mate. And he just cracked it with me. He said, go on then. Sort of. Yeah. So I was that annoyed with him and that angry, I didn't even go into the office to call Mum to come and pick me up. I actually walked down the road to a payphone, called Mum up, come down and say, he's no gentleman.
Well, I taught him today, now I was in with his son.
I thought there was an illusion.
Actually, my son's got no Wi-Fi at the moment.